Hello, this is Dr. Annette Feravich. I am here picking my pimple so everyone could see it. It is day 372. It is July 9th, and I am reading from Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood. We are on the preface to chapter 11, so we'll be reading 2 chapters as we always do in this wonderful book. Petrol for the car, like food, was an expense we could not avoid, but my mom could get more mileage out of a tank of petrol than any human who has ever been on a road in the history of automobiles. She knew every trick. Driving around Johannesburg in our rusty old Volkswagen, every time she stopped in traffic, she'd turn off the car. Then the traffic would start and she'd turn the car on again. That stop-start technology that they use in hybrid cars now, that was my mom. She was a hybrid car before hybrid cars came out. She was the master of coasting. She knew every downhill between work and school, between school and home. She knew exactly where the gradient shifted to put it into neutral. She could time the traffic lights so we could coast through intersections without using the brakes or losing momentum. There were times when we would be in traffic and we had so little money for petrol that I would have to push the car. If we were stuck in gridlock, my mom would turn the car off, and it was my job to get out and push it forward 6 inches at a time. People would pitch up and offer to help. Are you stuck? Nope, we're fine. You sure? Yep. Can we help you? Nope. Do you need a tow? And what do you say? The truth? Thanks, but we're just so poor my mom makes her kid push the car. That was some of the most embarrassing stuff in my life. Pushing the car to school like the effing Flintstones. Because the other kids were coming in on that same road to go to school, I'd take my blazer off so that no one could tell what school I went to, and I would bury my head and push the car, hoping no one would recognize me. Outsider, chapter 11. After finishing primary school at H.A. Jack, I started grade 8 at Sandringham High School. Even after apartheid, most black people still lived in the townships, and the areas formerly designated as homelands where the only available government schools were the broken remnants of the Bantu system. Wealthy white kids, along with a few black people and colored people and Indians who had money or could get scholarships, were holed up in private schools which were super expensive but virtually guaranteed entry into university. Sandringham was what we call a Model C school, which meant it was a mix of government and private, similar to charter schools in America. The place was huge, 1,000 kids on sprawling grounds with tennis courts, sports fields, and a swimming pool. That's kind of how we were in Fremont. Being a Model C, and we were a C-class school. Being a Model C school and not a government school, Sandringham drew kids from all over, making it a near-perfect microcosm of post-apartheid South Africa as a whole. A perfect example of what South Africa has the potential to be. We had rich white kids, a bunch of middle-class white kids, and some working-class white kids. We had black kids who were newly rich, black kids who were middle-class, and black kids from the townships. We had colored kids and Indian kids and even a handful of Chinese kids too. Now that doesn't sound like Fremont. The pupils were integrated as they could be given that apartheid had just ended. At H.A. Jack, race was broken up into blocks. Sandringham was more like a spectrum. South African schools don't have cafeterias. At Sandringham, we'd buy our lunch at what we call the tuck stop, a little canteen, and then have free reign to go wherever we wanted on the school grounds to eat, the quad, the courtyard, the playground, wherever. Kids would break off and cluster into their cliques and groups. People were still grouped by color in most cases, but you could see how they all blended and shaded into one another. The kids who played soccer were mostly black. The kids who played tennis were mostly white. The kids who played cricket were a mix. The Chinese kids would hang out next to the prefab buildings. The Matrix, what South Africans call seniors, would hang out on the quad. The popular pretty girls would hang out over here, and computer geeks would hang out over there. To the extent that the groupings were racial, it was because of the ways race overlapped class and geography out in the real world. Suburban kids hung out with suburban kids. Township kids hung out with township kids. At break, as the only mixed kid of 1,000, I faced the same predicament I had on the playground at H.A. Jack. Where was I supposed to go? Even with so many different groups to choose from, I wasn't a natural constituent of any particular one. I obviously wasn't Indian or Chinese. The colored kids would crap on me all the time for being too black, so I wasn't welcome there. As always, I was adept enough with white kids not to get bullied by them, but the white kids were always going shopping, going to the movies, going on trips, things that required money. We didn't have any money, so I was out of the mix there too. The group I felt the most affinity for was the poor black kids. I hung out with them and got along with them, but most of them took minibuses to school from way out in the townships, from Soweto, from Tembisa, from Alexandra. They rode to school as friends and went home as friends. They had their own their own groups. Weekends and school holidays, they were hanging out with one another, and I couldn't visit. Soweto was a 40-minute drive from my house. We didn't have money for petrol. After school, I was on my own. Weekends, I was on my own. Even the outsider, I created my own little world. I did it out of necessity. I needed a way to fit in. I also needed money, a way to buy the same snacks and do the things that the other kids were doing, which is how I became the tuck shop guy. Thanks to my long walk to school, I was late every single day. I'd have to stop off in the prefect's office to write my name down for detention. I was the patron saint of detention. Already late, I'd run to join my morning classes, math, English, biology, whatever. The last period before break was assembly. The pupils would come together in the assembly hall, each grade seated row by row, and the teacher and the prefects would get up on stage and go over the business of what was happening in the school, announcements, awards, that sort of thing. The names of the kids with detention were announced at every assembly, and I was always one of them. Always, every single day. It was a running joke. The prefect would say, "Detentions for today," and I would stand up automatically. I was like the Oscars, and I was Meryl Streep. There was one time I stood up, and then the prefect named the 5 people, and I wasn't one of them. Everyone burst out laughing. Somebody yelled out, "Where's Trevor?" The prefect looked at the paper and shook his head. Nope. The entire hall erupted with cheers and applause. Yay! Then immediately after assembly, there would be a race to the tuck shop because the queue to buy food was so long. Every minute you spent in the queue was working against your break time. The sooner you got your food, the longer you had to eat, play a game of soccer, or hang out. Also, if you got there late, the best food was gone. 2 things were true about me at that age. 1, I was still the fastest kid in school, and 2, I had no pride. The second we were dismissed from assembly, I would run like a bat out of hell to the tuck shop so I could be the first one there. I was always first in line. I became notorious for being that guy, so much so that people started coming up to me in line. "Hey, can you buy this for me?" Which would piss me off. The kids behind me, which would piss off the kids behind me because it was basically cutting the line. So people started approaching me during assembly. They'd say, "Hey, I've got 10 rand. If you buy my food for me, I'll give you 2. That's when I learned time is money. I realized people would pay me to buy their food because I was willing to run for it. I started telling everyone at assembly, "Place your orders. Give me a list of what you want. Give me a percentage of what you're going to spend, and I'll buy your food for you." I was an overnight success. Fat guys were my number one customers. They loved food but couldn't run. I had all these rich fat white kids who were like, this is fantastic. My parents spoil me. I've got money and now I've got a way I can get food without having to work for it. And I still get my break. I had so many customers I was turning kids away. I had a rule. I would take 5 orders a day, high bidders only. I'd make so much that I could buy my lunch using other kids' money and keep the lunch money my mom gave me for pocket cash. Then I could afford to catch a bus home instead of walking or save up to buy whatever. Every day I take orders, assembly would end, and I'd make my mad dash and buy everybody's hot dogs and Cokes and muffins. If you paid me an extra, you could even tell me where you'd be and I'd deliver it to you. I'd found my niche. Since I belonged to no group, I learned to move seamlessly between groups. I floated. I was a chameleon, still a cultural chameleon. I learned how to blend. I could play sports with the jocks. I could talk computers with the nerds. I could jump in the circle and dance with the township kids. I popped around to everyone, working, chatting, telling jokes, making deliveries. I was like a weed dealer, but of food. The weed guy is always welcome at the parties. He's not a part of the circle, but he's invited into the circle temporarily because of what he can offer. That's who I was, always an outsider. As the outsider, you can retreat into a shell, be anonymous, be invisible. Or you can go the other way. You protect yourself by opening up. You don't ask to be accepted for everything you are, just one part of yourself that you're willing to share. For me, it was humor. I learned that even though I didn't belong to one group, I could be part of any group that was laughing. I'd drop in, pass out the snacks, tell a few jokes. I'd perform for them. I'd catch a bit of their conversation, learn more about their group, and then leave. I never overstayed my welcome. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't an outcast. I was everywhere with everybody, and at that time, I was all by myself. I don't regret anything I've ever done in life, any choice that I've made, but I'm consumed with regret for the things I didn't do, the choices I didn't make, the things I didn't say. We spend so much time being afraid of failure, afraid of rejection, but regret is the thing we should fear most. Failure is an answer. Rejection is an answer. Regret is an eternal question you will never have the answer to. What if only? I wonder what would have. You will never know, and it will haunt you for the rest of your days. I've tried. And I've tried to be that example for my boys. To break out of the mold that we had for women, for liberal, liberated women. You can do it all. You can be a good mother. You can be smart and get a PhD at the university. You can get a great husband. You can succeed. You can have purpose. You can be a Christian and talk about God, or at least godly things, in a secular university. My fear is that I've said too much. So I still have regret. And I've talked about this before. Not here in the classroom like this, but I've talked about it before. You can still have regret. You can go for everything. Not be afraid of failure. not be afraid of rejection. There was some rejection I didn't like. I didn't like networking because I felt like, you know, I was selling myself. I didn't like that, but I can really relate to being able to go across different groups. I was that person. I used my sense of humor. I was pretty funny in the classroom. I was really funny in the classroom. So I do feel like I was that person. But I remember talking about these dreams that I had for being able to build that community. I talked about those dreams that I had and told my husband, you could still have regret. What if you have so much opposition, so much rejection, that it has a ripple effect on all the people that you love? Then what do you do? What if I can't get a job now because of that? And what if I keep pursuing and then my children can't get a job or a career or the things out of life that they want? What if my ambition, my intellect, downgraded the ambition and intellect of people around me and people that I love? What if that's the case? You can still have regret, and it can run deep. A young man's long, awkward, occasionally tragic, and frequently humiliating education and affairs of the heart, part 2, The Crush. This is chapter 12. In high school, the attention of girls was not an affliction I suffered from. I wasn't the hot guy in class. I wasn't even the cute guy in class. I was ugly. Puberty was not kind to me. My acne was so bad that people used to ask what was wrong with me, like I'd had an allergic reaction to something. It was the kind of acne that qualifies as a medical condition. Acne vulgaris, the doctor called it. We're not talking about pimples. Kids. What? It feels like there's a page missing here. 141, 142, 143, 144, 145, 146. Oh, I get it. We're not talking about pimples, kids. There we go. We're talking about pustules, big pus-filled blackheads and whiteheads. They started on my forehead, spread down the side of my face, and covered my cheeks and neck and ravaged me everywhere. Being poor didn't help. Not only could I not afford a decent haircut, leaving me with a huge, unruly afro, but my mother also used to get angry at the fact that I grew out of my school uniforms too fast, so to save money, she'd start buying my clothes 3 sizes too big. My blazer was too long and my pants were too baggy, and my shoes flopped around. I was a clown. And of course, Murphy's Law, the year my mom started buying my clothes too big was the year I stopped growing. So now I was never going to grow into my clown clothes, and I was stuck being a clown. The only thing I had going for me was the fact that I was tall, but even there I was gangly and awkward looking. Duck feet, high butt, nothing worked. He sure is good looking now. After suffering my Valentine's Day heartbreak at the hands of Maylene and the handsome, charming Lorenzo, I learned a valuable lesson about dating. What I learned was that cool guys get girls, and funny guys get to hang out with cool guys with their girls. I was not a cool guy, therefore I did not have girls. I understood that formula very quickly, and I knew my place. I didn't ask girls out. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't even try. For me to try to get a girl would have upset the natural order of things. Parts of my success as the tuck shop guy was that I was welcome everywhere, and I was welcome everywhere because I was nobody. I was the acne-ridden clown with duck feet and floppy shoes. I wasn't a threat to the guys. I wasn't a threat to the girls. The minute I became somebody, I risked no longer being welcome as nobody. The pretty girls were already spoken for. The popular guys had staked their claim. They would say, I like Zalika. And you knew what that meant. If you tried anything with the Zalika, there'd be a fight. In the interest of survival, the smart move was to stay on the fringe, stay out of trouble. At Sandringham, the only time girls in class looked at me was when they wanted me to pass a letter to the hot guy in class. But there was one girl I knew named Johanna. Johanna and I had been at the same school intermittently our whole lives. We were in preschool at Maryvale together. Then she left and went to another school. Then we were in primary school at H.A. Jack together. Then she left and went to another school. Then finally we were at Sandringham together. Because of that, we became friends. Johanna was one of the popular girls. Her best friend was Zahira. Johanna was beautiful. Zahira was stunning. Zahira was colored Cape Malay. She looked like Salma Hayek. Johanna was out and about and kissing boys, so the guys were all into her. Zahira, as beautiful as she was extremely shy, so there weren't as many guys after her. Johanna and Zahira were always together. They were one grade below me, but in terms of popularity, they were 3 grades above me. Still, I got to hang out with them because I knew Johanna, and we had this thing from being in different schools together. Dating girls may have been out of the question for me, but talking to them was not, because I could make them laugh. Human beings like to laugh, and lucky for me, pretty girls are human beings. So I could relate to them in that way, but never in the other way. I knew this because whenever they stopped laughing at my jokes and stories, they'd say, "So how do you think I can get Daniel to ask me out?" I always had a clear idea of where I stood. Outwardly, I had carefully cultivated my status as the funny, non-threatening guy, but secretly I had the hugest crush on Zahira. She was so pretty and so funny. We hang out and have great conversations. I thought about her constantly, but for the life of me, I never considered myself worthy of dating her. I told myself, I'm going to have a crush on her forever, and that's all that's ever going to happen. At a certain point, I decided to map out a strategy. I decided I'd be best friends with Zahira and stay friends with her long enough to ask her to the matrix dance, what we call our senior prom. Mind you, we were in grade 9 at this point. The matrix dance was 3 years away, but I decided to play the long game. I was like, yep, just gonna take my time, because that's what happens in the movies, right? I'd seen my American high school movies. You hang around long enough as the friendly good guy, and the girl dates a bunch of handsome jerks, and then one day she turns around and goes, "Oh, it's you. It was always you. You're the guy I was supposed to be with all along." That was my plan. It was foolproof. I hung out with Zahira every chance I got. We'd talk about boys, which ones she liked and which ones liked her. I'd give her advice. At one point, she got set up with this guy, Gary. They started dating. Gary was in the popular group, but kind of shy, and Zahira was in the popular group, but kind of shy. So his friends and her friends set them up together like an arranged marriage. But Zahira didn't like Gary at all. She told me. We talked about everything. One day, I don't know how, but I plucked up the courage to ask Zahira for a phone number, which was a big deal back then because it wasn't like cell phone numbers where everybody has everyone's number for texting and everything. This was the landline to her house where her parents might answer. We were talking one afternoon at school, and I asked, "Can I get your phone number? Maybe I can call you and we can talk at home sometime." She said yes, and my mind exploded. What? A girl is giving me her phone number? This is insane. What do? I was so nervous. I'll never forget her telling me the digits one by one as I wrote them down, trying to keep my hand from shaking. We said goodbye and went our separate ways to class, and I was like, "Okay, Trevor, play it cool. Don't call her right away." I called her that night at 7. She'd given me her number at 2. This was me being cool. Dude, don't call her at 5. That's too obvious. Call her at 7. I phoned her house that night. Her mom answered. I said, may I speak to Zahira, please? Her mom called her, and she came to the phone, and we talked for like an hour. After that, we started talking more at school, on the phone. I never told her how I felt, never made a move. Nothing. I was always too scared. Zahira and Gary broke up. Then they got back together. Then they broke up. Then they got back together. Then kissed once, but she didn't like it, and they never kissed again. Then they broke up for real. I bided my time through it all. I watched popular Gary go down in flames, and I was still the good friend. Yep, the plan is working. Matrix dance, here we come. Only 2.5 years to go. Then we had the mid-year school holidays. The day we came back, Zahira wasn't at school. Then she wasn't at school the next day. Then she wasn't at school the next day after that. Eventually I went and tracked down Johanna on the quad. Hey, where's Zahira? I said. She hasn't been around for a while. Is she sick? No, she said. Didn't anyone tell you? She left the school. She doesn't go here anymore. What? Yeah, she left. My first thought was, wow, okay, that's news. I should give her a call to catch up. What school did she move to? I asked. She didn't. Her dad got a job in America. During the break, they moved there. They've emigrated. What? Yeah, she's gone. She was such a good friend, too. I'm really sad. Are you as sad as I am? Yeah, I said, still trying to process everything. I liked Zahira. She was really cool. Yeah, she was super sad, too, because she had such a huge crush on you. She was always waiting for you to ask her out. Okay, I gotta go to class. Bye. She ran off and left me standing there stunned. She'd hit me with so much information at once. First that Zahira was gone, then that she had left for America, and then that she'd liked me all along. It was like I'd been hit by 3 successive waves of heartbreak, each one bigger than the last. My mind raced through all the hours we'd spent talking on the quad, on the phone, all the times I could have said, hey, Zahira, I like you. Will you be my girlfriend? 10 words that might have changed my life if I'd had the courage to say them. But I hadn't. And now she was gone. Oh my gosh, is that heartbreaking. I think we're going to read one more chapter since it's only 27 minutes. In every nice neighborhood, there's one white family that does not give an F. You know the family I'm talking about. They don't do their lawn, don't paint the fence, don't fix the roof. Their house is crap. My mom found that house and bought it, which is how she snuck a black family into a place as white as Highlands North. Most black people integrating into white suburbs were moving to places like Bramley and Lombardy East. But for some reason, my mom chose Highlands North. It was a suburban area, lots of shopping, working people mostly. Not wealthy, but stable and middle class. Older houses, but still a nice place to live. In Soweto, I was the only white kid in the black township. In Eden Park, I was the only mixed kid in the colored area. In Highlands North, I was the only black kid in the white suburb. And by only, I mean only. In Highlands North, the white never took flight. It was a large Jewish neighborhood, and Jewish people don't flee. They're done fleeing. They've already fled. They get to a place, build their shul, and hold it down. Since the white people around us weren't leaving, there weren't a lot of families like ours moving in behind us. We didn't make any friends in Highlands North for the longest time. I had an easier time making friends in Eden Park, to be honest. In the suburbs, everyone lived behind walls. The white neighborhoods of Johannesburg were built on white fear of black crime, fear of black uprisings and reprisals. And as a result, virtually every house sits behind a 6-foot wall, and on top of that wall is electric wire. Everyone lives in a plush, fancy, maximum security prison. There is no sitting on the front porch, no saying hi to the neighbors, no kids running back and forth between houses. I'd ride my bike around the neighborhood for hours without seeing a single kid. I'd hear them, though. They were all meeting up behind brick walls for play dates I wasn't invited to. I'd hear people laughing and playing. and I'd get off my bike and creep up and peek over the wall and see a bunch of white kids splashing around in someone's swimming pool. I was like a peeping Tom, but for friendship. It was only after a year or so that I figured out the key to making black friends in the suburbs, the children of domestics. Many domestic workers in South Africa, when they get pregnant, they get fired. Or if they're lucky, the family they work for lets them stay on and they can have the baby, but then the baby goes to live with relatives in the homelands. Then the black mother raises the white children, seeing her own child only once a year at the holidays. But a handful of families would let their domestics keep their children with them, living in little maids' quarters or flatlets in the backyard. For a long time, those kids were my only friends. Chapter 13, Colorblind. At Sandringham, I got to know this one kid, Teddy. Funny guy, charming as heck. My mom used to call him Bugs Bunny. He had a cheeky smile with two big teeth that stuck out the front of his mouth. Teddy and I got along like a house on fire. One of those friends where you start hanging out and from that day forward, you're never apart. We were both naughty, too. With Teddy, I'd finally met someone who made me feel normal. I was the terror in my family. He was a terror in his family. When you put us together, it was mayhem. Walking home from school, we'd throw rocks through windows just to see them shatter, and then we'd run away. We got detention together all the time. The teachers, the pupils, the principal, everyone at school knew Teddy and Trevor, thick as thieves. The only reason why I'm trying not to swear is because if I start swearing here, then I'll start swearing, and I don't want to use bad language. I'm just trying to break that habit altogether. So I'm sorry if it sounds funny that I'm not using it, and I wish that I could use Trevor's words the way that he uses them, and not be so concerned about it affecting my everyday language. Teddy's mom worked as a domestic for a family in Linksfield, a wealthy suburb near school. Linksfield was a long walk from my house, nearly 40 minutes, but still doable. Walking around was pretty much all I did back then anyway. I couldn't afford to do anything else, and I couldn't afford to get around any other way. If you liked walking, you were my friend. Teddy and I walked all over Johannesburg together. I'd walk to Teddy's house and we'd hang out there. Then we'd walk back to my house and hang out there. We'd walk from my house down to the city center, which was like a 3-hour hike just to hang out, and then we'd walk all the way back. Friday and Saturday nights, we'd walk to the mall and hang out. The Balfour Park shopping mall was a few blocks from my house. It's not a big mall, but it has everything: an arcade, a cinema, restaurant, South Africa's version of Target, South Africa's version of the Gap. Then once we were at the mall, since we never had any money to shop or watch movies or buy food, we'd just wander around inside. One night we were at the mall and most of the shops were closed, but the cinema was still showing movies, so the building was still open. There was a stationery shop that sold greeting cards and magazines, and it didn't have a door, so when it closed at night, there was only a metal gate like a trellis that was pulled across the entrance and padlocked. Walking past the shop, Teddy and I realized that if we put our arms together, if we could put our arms through the trellis, we could reach the rack of chocolates just inside. And these weren't just any chocolates, they were alcohol-filled chocolates. I loved alcohol. Loved it. My whole life, I'd steal sips of grown-ups' drinks whenever I could. We reached in, grabbed a few, drank the liquor inside, and then gobbled down the chocolates. We'd hit the jackpot. We started going back again and again to steal more. We'd wait for the shops to start to close, and then we'd go sit against the gate acting like we were just hanging out. We'd check to make sure the coast was clear, and then one of us would reach in, grab chocolate, and drink the whiskey. Reach in, grab a chocolate, drink the rum. Reach in, grab a chocolate, drink the brandy. We did this every weekend for at least a month, having the best time. Then we pushed our luck too far. It was Saturday night. We were hanging out at the entrance to the stationery shop, leaning up against the gate. I reached in to grab a chocolate, and at that exact moment, a mall cop came around the corner and saw me with my arm in up to my shoulder. I brought my hand out with a bunch of chocolates in it. It was almost like a movie. I saw him, he saw me, his eyes went wide. I tried to walk away, acting natural. Then he shouted, "Hey, stop!" And the chase was on. We bolted, heading for the doors. I knew if a guard cut us off at the exit, we'd be trapped, so we were hauling butt as fast as we could. We cleared the exit. The second we hit the parking lot, mall cops were coming at us from every direction, a dozen of them at least. I was running with my head down. These guards knew me. I was in the mall all the time. The guards knew my mom too. She did her banking at the mall. If they even caught a glimpse of who I was dead. We ran straight across the parking lot, ducking and weaving between parked cars, the guards right behind us yelling. We made it to the petrol station out at the road, ran through there, and hooked left up the main road. They chased and chased, and we ran and ran, and it was awesome. The risk of getting caught was half the fun of being naughty, and now the chase was on. I was loving it. I was crapping myself, but also loving it. This was my turf. This was my neighborhood. You couldn't catch me in my neighborhood. I knew every alley and every street, every back wall to climb over, every fence with a gap big enough to slip through. I knew every shortcut you could possibly imagine. As a kid, wherever I went, whatever building I was in, I was always plotting my escape. You know, in case shit went down. I want to read his words. It just sounds like it's not Trevor Noah if I don't. In reality, I was a nerdy kid with almost no friends, but in my mind, I was an important and dangerous man who needed to know where every camera was and where all the exit points were. I knew we couldn't run forever. We need a plan. As Teddy and I booked past the fire station, there was a road off to the left, a dead end that ran into a metal fence. I knew that there was a hole in the fence to squeeze through, and on the far side was an empty field behind the mall that took you back to the main road and back to my house. A grown-up couldn't fit through the hole, but a kid could. All my years of imagining the life of a secret agent for myself finally paid off. Now that I needed an escape, I had one. "Teddy, this way," I yelled. "No, it's a dead end. We can get through the fence. We can get through. Follow me." He didn't. I turned and ran into the dead end. Teddy broke the other way. Half the mall cops followed him, half followed me. I got to the fence and knew exactly how to squirm through. Head, then shoulders, one leg, then twist, then the other leg. Done. I was through. The guard hit the fence behind me and couldn't follow. I ran across the field to a fence on the far side, popped through there, and then I was right on the road 3 blocks from my house. I slipped my hand into my pocket and casually walked home, another harmless pedestrian out for a stroll. Once I got back to my house, I waited for Teddy. He didn't show up. I waited 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, no Teddy. F. I ran to Teddy's house in Lynxfield, no Teddy. Monday morning I went to school, still no Teddy. F. I was worried. After school, I went home and checked at my house again. Nothing. Teddy's house again. Nothing. Then I ran back home. An hour later, Teddy's parents showed up. My mom greeted them at the door. "Teddy's been arrested for shoplifting," they said. Ugh. I eavesdropped on their whole conversation from the other room. From the start, my mom was certain I was involved. "Well, where was Trevor?" she asked. Teddy said he wasn't with Trevor, they said. My mom was skeptical. Are you sure Trevor wasn't involved?" "No, apparently not. The cops said there was another kid, but he got away." "So it was Trevor?" "No, we asked Teddy, and he said it wasn't Trevor. He said it was some other kid." "Huh? Okay." My mom called me in. "Do you know about this thing?" "What thing?" "Teddy was caught shoplifting." "What?" I played dumb. "No, that's crazy. I can't believe it." "Teddy? No." "Where were you?" my mom asked. "I was at home." "But you're always with Teddy." I shrugged. "Not on this occasion, I suppose." For a moment, my mom thought she'd caught me red-handed, but Teddy given me a solid alibi. I went back to my room thinking I was in the clear. The next day I was in class and my name was called over the PA system. "Trevor Noah, report to the principal's office." All the kids were like, "Oh." The announcements could be heard in every classroom, so now collectively the whole school knew I was in trouble. I got up and walked to the office and waited anxiously on an uncomfortable wooden bench outside the door. Finally, the principal, Mr. Friedman, walked out. Trevor, come in. Waiting inside his office was the head of mall security, 2 uniformed police officers, and Teddy's homeroom teacher, Mrs. Vorster. A room full of silent, stone-faced white authority figures stood over me, the guilty young black man. My heart was pounding. I took a seat. Trevor, I don't know if you know this, Mr. Friedman said, but Teddy was arrested the other day. What? I played the whole thing again. Teddy? Oh no, what for? For shoplifting. He's been expelled and he won't be coming back to school. We know there was another boy involved, and these officers are going going around to the schools in the area to investigate. We called you here because Mrs. Vorster tells us you're Teddy's best friend, and we want to know, do you know anything about this? I shook my head. No, I don't know anything. Do you know who Teddy was with? No. Okay, he stood up and walked over to a television in the corner of the room. Trevor, the police have video footage of the whole thing. We'd like you to take a look at it. My heart was pounding in my chest. Well, life, it's been fun, I thought. I'm going to get expelled. I'm going to go to jail. This is it. Mr. Friedman pressed play on the VCR. The tape started. It was grainy, black and white security camera footage, but you could see what was happening plain as day. They even had it from multiple angles. Me and Teddy reaching through the gate. Me and Teddy racing for the door. They had the whole thing. After a few seconds, Mr. Friedman reached up and paused it with me. For a few meters out, freeze-framed in the middle of the screen. In my mind, this was when he was going to turn to me and say, now, would you like to confess? He didn't. Trevor, he said, do you know any white kids that Teddy hangs out with? I nearly shat myself. What? I looked at the screen and realized Teddy was dark. I am light. I have olive skin, but the camera can't expose for light and dark at the same time. So when you put me on a black and white screen next to a black person, the camera doesn't know what to do. If the camera has to pick, it picks me as white. My color gets blown out. In this video, there was a black person and a white person, but still, it was me. The picture wasn't great and my facial features were a bit blurry, but if you look closely, it was me. I was Teddy's best friend. I was Teddy's only friend. I was the single most likely accomplice. You had to at least suspect that it was me. They didn't. They grilled me for a good 10 minutes, but only because they were so sure that I had to know who the white kid was. Trevor, you're Teddy's best friend. Tell us the truth. Who is this kid? I don't know. You don't recognize him at all? No. Teddy never mentioned him to you? Never. At a certain point, Mrs. Vorster started running through a list of all white kids she thought it could be. Is it David? No. Ryan? No. Frederick? No. I kept waiting for it to be a trick, for them to turn and say, it's you. They didn't. At a certain point, I felt so invisible, I almost wanted to take credit. I wanted to jump up and point at the TV and say, are you people blind? That's me. Can you not see that's me? But of course I didn't, and they couldn't. These people had been so screwed up by their own construct of race that they could not see that the white person they were looking for was sitting right in front of them. Eventually, they sent me back to class. I spent the rest of the day and the next couple of weeks waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for my mom to get the call. We've got him. We figured it out. But the call never came. Wow. What a story, Trevor Noah. What a story. Well, thanks so much for joining me here in the classroom. This is the reading room, Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood. Wow. This is July 9th in the classroom. It's day 372. Tomorrow I'm going to be here for Discovery Recovery. So we are going to have our very first YouTube podcast, whatever you want to call it, on this new classroom where I am talking about what I've discovered about recovering, right? Things that I know psychologically, so I get to share my voice relative to what I know about psychology and this and things like this book and what I'm learning and what I've talked to you about what I'm learning. So it's been difficult. That is an amazing story. That's an amazing chapter. Wow. Okay, so Dr. Annette Feravich, where I am always here working to make your mind, your body, and your spirit healthier. I am trying to take on responsibilities because there's a lot of things that I really fear about what is going on. But yeah. And it is scary. It's scary because I feel like people know everything about what is going on except with me, except for the real truth. And so why are they looking at me constantly? That was interesting. That was interesting. No film on me like that. I'm not saying I didn't do a little petty theft when I was young. But that was like maybe 2 times, and I was like, seriously? If you can afford to buy the makeup, pay for the makeup. Yeah. Yeah. That was a good story. Okay, that was a good chapter. All right, thanks so much for joining me here. It actually makes me feel a little bit better about what's going on. They're trying to make me out to be Trevor, and I'm not. Thanks again for joining me here in the classroom. I will see you tomorrow at 9:30. It will probably be an hour and a half classroom, even though this usually is, not this classroom, but the other ones are usually a little bit longer than an hour. At least Bookless is, occasionally. But this one will be an hour and a half to get a few more pieces of information, and I need to get started on that. So thanks for joining me, day 372. It is July 9th in the classroom. I'm always working as Dr. Annette Feravich, the classroom teacher, to make your mind, your body, and your spirit healthier. Thanks.